Okay.
Did not hear from Mr. Berry.
And I think that once we get the,
If that hasn't
application.
been
All right.
Have anybody volunteer to take minutes?
I'll try, but I'm gonna tell you what, you better to read my handwriting.
I will do it if you give me another piece of paper.
There you go.
Just so you, yeah,
Give you a notebook.
yeah.
Probably has better handwriting than me, so I'll go for Sean.
Yeah.
All right, we're good. All right,
Sean.
let's get this party started. Welcome, everybody, for coming to the EDI committee meeting. We have a lot to cover, and hopefully we can get through as much as possible. Let's see, last month, just to kind of review what we did, we talked about several different things that we wanted to accomplish. So we talked about creating a small task force for strategic plan changes. We talked about a book study for the framework for understanding poverty. And this is just a brief synopsis. And there was update to New Hanover County Poverty Task Force. I don't have a lot of notes on that.
We just gave that update, and you actually, Mr. Johnson, have met with the task force subsequently, right?
So,
You met with them? Poverty Task Force. in the
Poverty
county?
Task Force.
Yep.
so those were the three things that we had, the three main things that we had talked about. But tonight, there's a lot for us to focus on. If we can get through as much as possible, it'd be great. But if we wanted to start with the EDI strategic plan, or I'll take any suggestions from any other members as to where we want to. The topics are EDI strategic plan, support for EDI in schools, and student voice work session.
Student voice work section
Is not.
optional.
Is optional.
If they're here.
Okay, so that's,
That's just going to be their space.
okay. So which would we like to address first, the strategic plan or support for EDI in schools?
Miss Mason.
I say we
Miss
take it
Evans,
from the top and start with strategic plan.
You say it, but nobody has, I don't even have my copy, so I don't know if we'll be able to follow along or how you propose to go through that. I mean, leave off where we were, or do you think it's better to wait till?
Well, I can just mention that the ask, if this is coming from the email that I sent, the ask was to learn about what came out of the roundtables. What suggestions are people making for the equity goal? And how might we update our strategic plan strategies based on the community roundtable?
You're talking about the town hall we just had?
Town hall, yes,
Trying to
sorry, town
think.
hall.
My table. probably depend on who you were with and what, at the table at the time.
So didn't
So-
each board member go to each table?
We were at each
So-
table, we had 15
So what
minutes
did
to-
we hear about equity at the tables?
So I know at the table I was sitting at with Dr. Barnes, it was raising the question of the HR component of the strategic plan. So we're looking at the recruitment and retention of our teachers. So a lot of the questions were raised around that also, which tie back into the budget.
So let me be clear. So I was thinking we were just going to focus on the equity goal, but if you made a really important connection saying that in human resources, and maybe I don't understand how the meeting session went. I thought we were goal specific, but maybe the meeting, people
was
talked
more
about all goals at all
dish.
tables.
So are you talking about retention and recruitment of
Teachers.
minority educators and bilingual educators?
Yes.
Underrepresented minorities, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we did mention that, but I will say it kind of reached into all educators because we have been like, we were asking, have we seen higher than normal turnover? What about regrettable turnover, regrettable losses? You know, how much is anecdotal versus whatever? It seems like there's been a lot of exits lately, and so we kind of started talking at it at a generic level, and then we talked about.
I'm curious why that is, if they were specific to topics. Why did it get so broad? I feel like that
I think it just
could have been
depended
a
on who
missed
was at the
opportunity
table.
It
to
depended
focus.
on it depended on who was at the table, the questions that were asked. I know ours, we talked about the definition of equity and the success rate of what is happening in EDI. Is there data to show that this is helping the academics of our students? There may be data to show that that it's improving behaviors, but we also want to show the academic progress too, because as a school system, that's really the chief goal, is to educate our kids and make sure that they're leaving prepared. So when I was sitting at the table, that was some of the discussion that was happening. Is
When we say
where's this
leaving
data?
prepared, what are we wanting them to leave prepared for?
Academically, I would assume knowledgeable and ready to go into the workforce or go into college, or is EDI promoting that, benefiting that? Has it shown some academic benefit? Was the question.
And
That's really quick, and that's where you had, because the dynamic at the table of the people who are like asking the questions was super interesting, because you have a lot of people that were who were doing the diversity, equity, inclusion work in the private sector. So just really talking through how they were seeing the investment in DEI, really kind of correlate to their return on investment, how it boosted the level of the sense of belonging and through just intentional inclusive programming and things like that. So that was an interesting perspective to be uplifted from someone who was just working on the opposite end.
so I guess my question would be, what was our answer to those questions? Like, is EDI making headway and helping our bottom line in children's education?
So when I was sitting at the table, I don't think there was a specific answer that we achieved or heard. We did talk to Dr. Barnes, we talked to Mr. Johnson, and really just asked for that information to be shared with the public, because the public wants to know. Clearly, as there were some parents. As far as other conversations, I'm not
I was at
sure.
Sean's table and our discussion
So-
was on teacher. It was a teacher.
Was
Yeah.
the teacher retention?
Yeah, so during our rotation, we had that conversation on return on investment, and the challenge was made like, well, are we really seeing it? And some of the response was, okay, well, the data would be in DPI. We can get that, and we have asked for that in the past through this committee, and just haven't gotten all the detailed data that we would like to, but we have asked for specific data for both AIG, exceptional graduation rates. We've seen some data from the Cape Fear Collective when they collaborated with us several years ago, but that was more socioeconomic based in my recollection. But I will say that one of the responses, which I think was a fair response, was, well, we haven't really executed the strategy in the strategic plan, so how would we get an ROI yet if we don't have equity teams, if we don't have the work ongoing in the background? of course, we wouldn't see that yet. Now, statistically, it shows that we will get that. We just have not properly implemented that yet.
So how can we properly implement EDI and have it trickle down?
And I think that's where the conversation ended because it got stuck on the budget. You know.
Well, I brought it up, I'm trying to be pretty specific and not try to make too big of an umbrella. I said, first, money is the bridge over to success. You got to have money. We have none. I said, so that's A. I said, B, we got to, one of my favorite sayings at board meetings, we got to get out of the box and do something different. And I said, so, and I have mentioned Rachel Freeman by name. And I said, examples, Rachel Freeman. I said, we should consider doing something different with that school. We've poured hundreds of thousands of dollars, understandably, with staff. We've had our best teachers go in there with tremendous stipends, and they've left. And I said, so, we need to look at what can we do to enhance the overall success of these kids. So number one, I think we ought to consider a year-round school. And with those intersessions, you can make those as you wish. Some people do it with the seasons. But during that, you could also give kids an opportunity to work on their literacy skills. But year-round school, then they don't have a summer off. And they're constantly engaged, although they have minor breaks. And I said, I would even suggest that these kids take some trips to achieve their peripheral awareness and education during that time. I said, we could sit down and discuss this. And I said, and on top of that, I said, we need more schools having equity teams. So it's being discussed. But I was pretty specific about it. I think there's certain things we need to do.
So there is something we could do.
We talk about it a lot, but
We do, we talk about it, and we have a lot of meetings, right? We have a lot of meetings, but there is something we could do, especially because we have new leadership, and we're moving forward, and we're making some progress. So maybe it's time, not just to have the strategic plan and the strategies, but to take that conversation you have with the community and begin to think about our theory of change. And let that theory of change capture what we want to retain from the current version of the strategic plan and what we want to update based on our community conversations and new knowledge, and let it lead to some clear statements about what that return on investment could be. And I really like where Ms. Mason, actually great partnership between Ms. Mason and Mr. Johnson there, connecting ideas. One thing that would happen is exactly what Mr. McManus is saying. If we were getting a return on investment, it wouldn't be that, we've got more kids going to Harvard instead of Boston University. The return on investment would look at where are the current inequities in our school district, because we are equity, diversity, and inclusion, right? Where are the current inequities in our school district? What have we done to address those specific inequities? And are we making progress in addressing them? And this is where I think, and Ms. Walker, you will have excellent input, just like Sean had. We've been asking for those data. If you asked me to tell the story of New Hanover County, of where the current inequities are, I couldn't use a single piece of data I got from this committee to tell that story.
So I think this is the perfect opportunity right now to recognize the obvious element is the budget constraints, but also I do want to take some time to uplift the ways in which social capital and collaboration will be able to solve some of our has solved or will begin to push the needle on some of our strategic goals. And on September 14th, New Hanover County is hosting the Equity Summit. And I've been in conversations for the last couple months with the Chief Diversity Officer, Ms. Thompson, and they are working on this project on GIS mapping, where they're collected so many data points from the Women's Housing Authority, from the Department of Human Health Services, and also some data that she's collected from the school district to really map out the school district, New Hanover County, and have those overlapping data points to really highlight the neighborhoods which are impacted based off how you choose to filter the inequity. So that's a up and coming project.
Absolutely
That we're
loving
work-
that. I love
we're
what Linda
working
Thompson
on.
is doing with the county and what her staff does with GIS. I think
Yeah.
that's amazing. It's very similar to what Cape Fear Collective has been doing too, but perhaps more detailed and specific. The issue that isn't incorporated in that without the school district's participation is academic performance metrics. And what we won't get, I'm not saying not to do the GIS, I am pro the GIS and pro what we can learn from studying the context around our schools, but we've also got to have data of what is happening inside of the schools. We've talked for years about inclusion. What is the status of inclusive teaching for children with IEPs and related services? What is the status about access in all of our school buildings? What are the things that are happening inside the building so that we can understand them in the context around the building? So I love what the county is doing. And then I guess I have to ask, what are we doing inside of our schools, inside of our district? Now, I believe the superintendent has the answer. It's just, are we looking at that?
And I like think that's a good point, because when we say that, and I think so much of what is happening equitably throughout our schools is kind of going under the equity radar. For instance, we've heard about, and I want board members to help me, if it was the Spark program that we're partnering with, where we're one of 16 districts across the state of North Carolina, where we are going to have paid tutors in Forest Hills and Freeman for all students. That's equity. The other initiative that Dr. Faison has spearheaded with the Reading Buddies. First grade, we're going to have community partnerships where first graders will have a reading buddy, all first graders across the district, where we're asking our community partners to come in and read to students. That is equity. That is moving the bottom line. That is working towards improved literacy in our students.
And that's only 30 minutes a week that she's asking.
Yes, only 30 minutes.
So
So
anybody
community
watching?
partners, businesses, if you're
30
hearing
minutes
us,
a week.
please reach
30
out to
years.
Jean Hall at Jean.hall@nhcs.net. She is working to set up those community partners to make sure all of our first graders have reading buddies. So that's another point of equity. So there's a lot of equitable stuff going on. We just don't necessarily call it equity,
Or it's not filtered through.
or it's not filtered through this group. So I think we first need to identify those and then see where we may see some gaps happening.
Well, and that's where you could follow. That is an implied theory of change. We haven't generated it here, but somebody said things will be better if young children have reading tutors.
And
Right?
so,
Somebody said
Yeah.
that's their theory of change. So we could study the return on investment by following that theory of change. We just have to ask ourselves, what does the strategic plan have to do with that?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to make that connection, but I love, and Caress, we are so lucky you're still with us, because that's the kind of institutional knowledge we need to be hearing about.
So let me ask you something. And you said when you're referring to reading buddies, you said in first grade. How is that going into reference when you are allowing that child to read? So is there a strategic plan in place when we start looking at literacy and we start connecting that to the data source that's being collected for those first graders? Yes, it is great that a first grader is listening to someone read, but who is allowing them to read to them? And so where's that homeschool connection? And so my problem is, yes, you can ask businesses, and so when we look at equity, we look at parent equity, we look at the data that already exists, and so I love like the mapping and all that stuff, but then when you start going into definitions about what are impoverished neighborhoods and having these expectations or having these assumptions of what people or children know, or what parents are bringing to the table. And so the equity is the data within the school. And so I'm going back to this, in fact, and so, you know, my husband told me this recently. He said, feelings are not based on facts. And so one of the things is, just because we socially feel a certain way, the facts are telling us the truth when we look at the numbers. And I love qualitative data. However, the quantitative data is showing who, what, when, where, and how, and what is failing. And so it's no lie. And so like we keep having these discussions, and so yes, I did miss the last meeting because we had open house, but I work with children every day. every day in a situation to where people have already demeaned them or whatever the case may be. And this is tiring. This is because it's a lot of money in deficits. There's a lot of money when, y'all can get more likes than a child being able to read in first grade, or a student who is of a different race who people don't expect to be at a higher level. Like, this is for some of these meetings that we have on Tuesday nights. And it's ridiculous. And so I'm asking the team, so I've asked for data. I've asked for, okay, where's the strategic plan? I've asked for, okay, what is the work or the action behind this committee? I hear where I can be looking at a board meeting and it is being discussed that, well, what do we need EDI for? Because is your data equitable? Are the practices within the school equitable? Is everything occurring for every child, and does every child in New Hanover County schools have the same opportunity? And so when we start putting reading buddies, are reading buddies gonna show up at certain schools on time? Or are they gonna be at other schools? And so that is an equitable practice because it's about data and what is being collected. It has nothing to do with book bans. It has nothing to do with what is being read. Because truth be told, as a parent, I can go in the classroom and read the book with my child if I want to. And so I don't have time for all of that. But what I do have time for is looking at, okay, what is the data showing? If my child is at Rachel Freeman, what is my child not getting or getting at Rachel Freeman that they may not be getting at Cottington? And so I don't care if they're EC. I don't care if they're non-EC. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're black. So then when we did goal 1 in that plan prior to Malcolm, and this is nothing, that's why we said the students at certain levels. And so we talk a lot about actions. We talk a lot about things and tasks that have been completed and little check boxes and all that stuff, but where's the data to show? So when we say that New Hanover County schools are graduating more students, what do they look like?
Great question.
And so there is no subcategory data. It is a generalization. And so we're saying that more students, but does anybody ever talk about that those students who are leaving New Hanover County schools, if they graduate in a 5-year period from Cape Fear Community College, that New Hanover County Schools still gets credit? So I know that because I used to work at the adult high school program at Cape Fear, and where students were told by their academic advisors to go there. So all this argument, all this bickering, you need EDI. We need to have some strategic plans. We need to have the goals in place and whatever else. And so yes, it may be happening, under all these categories, but nobody can come in front of this board meeting on any given night and have a breakdown of data based on subcategory, based on culture, based on race, based on ethnicity, based on gender, based on whether they are whether they're identified, whether they have are they part of the NHCS process, so we can go through all the categories. But when you're not having a meeting about numbers and how your numbers are changing over time, it's blank.
Okay, so let's ask Malcolm, can we get those numbers? Can we have that at our next meeting?
So what we can't have, so our corrections are chain of command. Is we know this has to be an act that comes from our committee chair.
No, I'm saying, like, okay, I can put in a public records request right now and request that data.
Understood.
So I'm saying, why is that so hard to get to us? Because like Kamika says, we've asked for that data for probably 3 years now.
Yep.
And I've been at the table asking. And she brings up a good point. Where is it? Why can't we get it? Why is it not?
To be clarified, there's never been a denial from Malcolm Johnson.
Okay.
No, I never
Oh,
said
I'm not
that.
saying that.
I never said that you said it.
I'm just
I
saying,
know, so I just want to be mindful this is
Yeah.
a discourse.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
just-
no,
I do
no.
want to finish my point. You asked me, Malcolm, how come we haven't gotten the data? I'm saying there hasn't been a request that I've denied.
Okay.
Okay, so when we're looking at how this committee's operating, we're here at the committee. So what ask we have as a committee, we need to come together, and that's a task that we send to our 3 of our representatives right here to go to our board, because that has to come through. That's where we see the investment, and this is stuff that we have to. We know that because I can do as much as I can, but at the end of the day, I still have to recognize this has to come from the will of the board to truly to move the needle.
So what data do y'all want? So we've had disproportionality
Yeah.
presented to us at the full board meeting, and that's, anybody can go look at that. That is, to me, was a big milestone, because that basically said, we do have it.
So
And here's where it
let's
is.
Can we write down the data that we
Let's
want?
Write it
start-
down, let's
yeah,
go.
let's start
Can
there.
some
specifics.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I've gotten seclusion data before.
Okay.
Easily, so I've had that.
So can we
I
get
don't know what point
AIG
I'm
breakdown
past.
data?
We can get,
I've seen that data before. in a
I know we've all
subcommittee
seen it. I
with
know it's been
Casey.
presented to the
Yeah.
board.
To be
I'm asking,
fair,
can
yeah,
all of
let's
that
get it
data
here.
be
Yeah.
compiled and
Yeah.
put in a document,
No, I'm
in
with-
an
I'm
email
with
for
you.
us?
Yeah, I'm
Because
with
I've
you.
seen
Let's
all
take
this
it out
data,
of
which is
subgroups, right.
why, like, and I can say that, but I've seen it internally as a staff member, because not in NHCS working in the
Right.
district office, so
Right.
she
So
may
you can
not
see
have
our
seen
data.
that. So let's get all that data and let's bring it here and let's lay it on the table, because yes, my stories are anecdotal, but I feel like, and again, that's my blindness, my bias, because I've seen that data and I've seen people request that data and I've seen that data brought up to the board and the board discuss that data, but it's not coming here.
Right.
And we have,
Well, we should theoretically be the first line of defense
yes.
for that.
So can we
Yeah.
request AIG data? Can we request
specific.
the,
AIG what? AIG what? What do you want?
the seclusion data, the
Wait, let's go
suspension
back to
data,
AIG real
the
quick.
disproportionality
Hold
data?
up.
Okay,
AIG
so-
data, what we
okay.
want from the AIG data.
Okay,
Would it
from
be helpful-
AIG, can you just look at the number of students at each school that have been identified as AIG?
think
You
we
can
had
look
that
at that
data presented
process.
too.
And then,
And
so
then can
what-
we break that up also by,
Would it be helpful
Race.
if I sent to folks the Excel spreadsheets that Sean and I created 3 years ago that basically just array like not the answers yet, but the empty cells where the answers to these questions would come, and they do it by school so that we can look at patterns. Is that good? I mean, is that
I
helpful?
think we have consolidated that before.
and that's what I
So,
thought too, but
yeah.
I'm hearing that we don't have the data.
Well,
so I'm
no,
just-
we've never received it. Yeah, we consolidated the ask. We've never received
Okay.
it.
And to be clear, what I heard from Ms. Walker, which I thought was really illuminating and very helpful, is you did see some data this year that you perhaps have requested in the past, but it just kind of went into the ether. But you know the data exists because you saw the
yeah.
presentations this year. Exactly.
I have seen it.
That's
So
a
I guess the
Dr. Frank's
breakdown is,
question, because she's the director for academics, and she,
I mean, the breakdown, it seems to me, is that because look, when I was chair the first time I came on, we kind of did a more restructure again. And we've done that many times, and I had heard y'all loud and clear about what you wanted to do as a committee. And we put a lot of work into that.
Yeah.
And I think we still need to get you the link for that, because all the work is still online that we did. I think mine was goal 3, which was looking at suspension and seclusion data. We've had movement on that with policy, but it's still worth relooking at the data, because, we had some presentations from called audience last night that was saying we were still suspending too much for, what was it? It was
There was
for
one-
aggressive behavior.
There was aggressive behavior,
Right.
there was one for excessive affection.
Right, it was weird.
Excessive.
And I understand
excessive
what is
affection.
excessive
solve the problem, you gotta
Yeah, I was a
understand
little
who defined the
puzzled, but that's a
problem.
separate-
But
Define
it's-
those categories.
it can be
question.
too much interaction and touching.
Yeah.
And so that could probably be what that is, more so excessive affection, because it is, you are seeing it more. And so, that's in the school setting, so that's a thing. But when it comes to, let's really be honest, like, okay, when we start talking about suspension rates, and so I know it's been seclusion rooms, and you've been talking about younger suspensions and all that, okay, but what about the older suspensions?
Yeah, we haven't got to that.
And then, so when nobody has gotten to that day.
Right.
And so Malcolm, trust and believe, I'm asking more so our board members, because I know that sometimes you guys can get things done quicker. But when we talk about suspension rates, that's fine, but no one is looking at the big problem. And so, okay, then when you go to the social capital overlay, is drugs the bigger problem in high school for those suspensions, then, and is that being impacted by the community? Like, just things that can go ahead and answer some questions, so it's not even like a problem, but you already know what's being filtered in the schools. And especially since they're overcrowded. When it comes to graduation rates by race, by gender, looking at it by students with disabilities. So all of those things, like what is that graduation rate looking like? Okay, and how many students are graduating from K-Fair within that 5-year time frame where they are accredited at New Hanover County Schools? When you start looking at, when we talk about literacy, by 3rd grade, based on race, gender, students with disabilities, how many students are at that level of read, touch, eat? Like, so just, and then what schools still need additional support? So what schools, not just every 1st grade classroom, but let's target this school because they need more support for that action. And so then that way it's more proactive, and that's what that data is for. And so it's not about a get you, got you, but it's about actually having EDI strategic plans to understand how are you doing it, but you got to have a data source
Right.
first. And you got to be able to do the fidelity test.
So just so that we're staying on this task, right now what I have as far as data that this committee is asking for is AIG
Well, let's stop there for a second. What with AIG? We want to break down to
at
what?
each school.
Would it be okay if I sent you the spreadsheet rather than compiling the
absolutely.
Yeah, let's
questions?
just send, because
I
it's
just wanna make sure we get our
consolidated and
specific
it
With
is-
all of the specifics?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
AIG,
Okay,
and
perfect. That would be
you
absolutely
know,
perfect.
I'll send it after this
graduation
meeting, it's not on my
rates.
phone.
Okay.
And in addition to that, I know the test scores just came out today, so
Today.
can we get that data as well? I don't know that that would have
Okay,
been on
well,
your.
let me just say what I have written
Spreadsheet.
down so far. I have AIG, I have seclusion, I have suspension, I have graduation. You're saying test scores.
Right.
Miss Unone, I know you have your hand up and I've seen it over there, but there was so much conversation. What did you want to say?
Can I add something?
Sure thing.
Thank you. You guys know that I'm an advocate, so I'm pretty much all over the district. And there's a couple of things that I think I would like to see more focus on. If you were to ask me, and I think a lot of the teachers that I speak with, and parents, I would say that our major problem is mental health. And I think everything's really revolving around that, because children can't learn if they're coming from a situation of trauma, and sometimes it's ongoing, it's not in the past, but we know that past trauma also is gonna unfortunately pay it forward. The externalizing behaviors that we see that manifest themselves in referrals, in suspensions, in seclusions, are primarily based from kids with disabilities and concomitant trauma. There's enough research across the board. We're not addressing it.
Okay, so how do you suggest that shows up in the data? Because I know we're making a list of perhaps asks.
Exactly. So the breakdown that we already have, that we've seen, when we look at who is being suspended, we already know who is being secluded, it's majority EC kids.
Yeah, we know that.
Our teachers are being expected to be psychologists and psychiatrists. They're being asked for too much right now. But that's where we are. We're seeing unprecedented levels of need in our students. We're also faced with teachers who are burning out because they can't do this. They weren't meant to do this. They are not trained to do this, and they're not getting the support. It's just not there. So when you have a child who's triggered, and I was working yesterday with a 4-year-old, massive, horrific trauma. Loving home now, but that's not going to end at 4. That's going to take a long time, more years, and a lot of work. He's so easily triggered. He can't even be alone in a room. Why? Because what happens when you're alone in a room to this little boy? So if he's starting to feel isolated in school or abandoned, he's going to go off. We don't have, go ahead.
So my understanding of what you're looking for as far as this is mental health data and the suspension seclusion correlation?
A connection. I think it's time to start looking
Okay.
at this through a different lens.
How about we just also start with our numbers? How many mental health professionals we have, how many social workers, how many counselors? Let's look at that first.
It's in the
I think
spreadsheet,
that-
yeah.
It is,
So-
yeah, it is in the
so that would be the
spreadsheet.
question.
I'm hearing
Is
from
this
our
one from
teachers
last year?
that
Yeah, from like 2
there's
years ago, and I
a
can't find
severe
it
nursing
online.
shortage now.
It's not
in
on
our
my
schools,
phone,
but
but
It might
I
be in
have
my
it.
drive.
Exactly. Of their kids.
It's too old to be.
The people who, someone said it, if they're stalker, or somebody said about the number of
pretty sure
staff leaving. We've had a huge exodus just before school started. And our existing staff is now being asked to pick up the slack.
And then, okay, back to staff and back to looking at data points. We don't have a benchmark. So I know, Malcolm, our goal, what we want is our outcome to be by 2027, students and staff report biannual surveys, 90% or higher agreement. Is there a way that we can get a survey out to, I know students is different because that takes board approval, but can we get a survey out to staff saying how do they feel? Do they feel supported equitably? Do they feel supported? Will it say 90% or higher? Are we at 70% right now? Are we at 60% right now? Because that's going to be something that we need to see and show growth on as well.
I think this group needs to come up with the survey.
Well, the question I was gonna say was,
But,
Well, I feel like that's a
there's
strategic
whole-
plan goal, and that goes back to,
Well,
so two things are getting ready to
Hold
happen
on,
right now
hold
within the
on,
district.
hold on.
huh?
There's
No,
a
it's an outcome.
There's a process already out there for the staff and what is it called? Is it the
Teacher working conditions survey? Is that-
Yes.
But
working
that's
conditions
only
of-
teachers, and that doesn't deal with equity.
Okay.
And that's all,
But does it address?
No.
Feeling supported or feeling anything like that?
So McManus, we did one a couple of years ago. We could probably re-up that one.
So, yeah, we did a whole staff survey, but that one
Right.
again did not, this one needs to be
Well, we make
EDI
it-
focused. This
yeah,
one
we
needs to
make
be
it
focused
EDI
on this
focused
goal.
next time.
And so
The issue is
you
the
need to look
percent
at,
who will actually fill it out.
All right, so what I will
Whatever
say.
that cloud that prohibits them from filling it
It needs
out.
to be an anonymous survey.
It was like 30%.
well,
So
either
coming
way,
out
we
of here-
can't achieve our outcome if we don't know where we are. So
All right.
that's like
We know
step
where we are
one, I
from
feel.
2 years
Okay.
ago. It wasn't good.
Mr. Johnson's turn.
All right, so I just want to answer the question. So coming out of human resources, we are going to be doing pushing out the teacher working condition survey this spring, and we're also in the process of developing another survey that's going to go out to our non-teachers. We're still in the drafting of what that will look like, so it's not even to the point where it has been presented out.
So you think we have an opportunity to add some questions in, or no?
That's why I could take that back to HR.
Yeah.
So the thing is, what's being brought up is the focus of that sense of belonging, that how, almost the experience. All right, so those are things that I can take back if those are some points we want to make sure are uplifted. But surveys are coming out for this season because we're due. Because I'm not sure how, because this is a lot of conversations I've been having recently with HR. I'm not sure what just the past practices have been with some of the surveys that have been going out, but I know this year they're intentional about really getting a baseline because we have new staff coming in, because we have a staff leaving. So we know we can't depend on a lot of that data from the faculty employee survey. So we are pushing that out. So I don't think it's too late to kind of make sure that we are having maximum impact on understanding how our staff are experiencing.
We have a block of them, right? Questions? just
I don't think we do
equity?
exit interviews when people leave.
There
Yes,
is
they
a-
do.
There is
Yes, they do.
there is an exit survey that goes out to
I
all
got it.
employees when they leave the district.
Yeah.
But I don't know what questions they ask.
I can tell you right now what the question is.
So essentially, I love what Ms. Mason and Mr. Johnson are doing together, the questions and the answers. Because what you're pointing out, I think Ms. Walker was saying that exactly the same thing based on past experience. We don't seem to have data-informed feedback loops where we start with a question and go and get some information to examine the response to our question, and then think about how we'd revise our question and revise our behavior, our actions, our management style, whatever we're doing, based on what we're learning from the data.
Definitely don't do it through this committee, unfortunately, and we should.
Yeah. and
Because
we
I
can-
know on the board level, we change a policy, we can look at the data before, and then we can look at it after. And, we get feedback every month, or at our board meetings about, suspension rates and stuff like that, because people do public records requests on that. And they want answers to those questions, like, what does aggressive behavior mean? If we change a policy, we want to know what that means and why they're so high in this level. So we do have some data points. Unfortunately, like I say, we haven't been doing the work through here.
And I think as a committee, we'd like to. I think
Yeah,
that's the thing,
yeah.
is we think, at least I think it would be more robust and rigorous of a program, and I think that there is some aspect to us that is underutilized
Oh,
right now.
definitely.
We've done stuff like the student voices and the heritage language courses, and
We got Malcolm.
we've done stuff, but
as
not
we're-
enough.
Yeah.
And as I've been here for one full cycle, so going through 1 year, and because I'm just hearing, I'm taking in what's being said, and what the questions are being asked and unanswered. I think the most important thing that brings into question when the new applications come out for this committee, thinking about looking at what diversity and equity inclusion means now in this current landscape and what we need right now and can do for our school district. Who are the individuals we want to ask to join this space? Who are the subject matter experts that sit in curriculum? Who are the subject matter experts that sit in EC? Who are the subject matter that sit, in some of these spaces? To where not saying that this role represents all of New Hanover County schools. I want to be sure that there are other New Hanover County school representatives here that actually are hands-on with that work. So it's a more firsthand. So I think that's a bigger conversation is when we're having these type of conversations, especially when they're sometimes off the cuff, we want to make sure the subject matter experts, so we do want to re-envision who do we need at this table and who would we like to invite to join in based off the consistent pattern of our conversations, which will always land anywhere from our students with disabilities to our AIG, and making sure that we need to extend that invite because that's what we're going to keep meeting these railroads. And I think that will create that feedback loop.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, like Malcolm, telling us about the plans for the surveys from HR. But you said spring cycle or spring semester. Is there any way to get something out sooner? So
It'll be for the teacher working condition and during
but
the time.
not a teacher working.
So
like,
for
is
during
there
that
a-
time period, it will be, we're looking at the spring.
So there's no way to put out an equity satisfaction survey.
I wouldn't be able to give you a definite answer, the answer you're looking for right now. So right now, I know that's where it's slated for the spring. We have to look, because there's a survey committee.
There's a survey committee?
It's a task force of people within HR that put the surveys together. So that's something that we have to go back and really look at that timeline. I
So,
don't
man,
have
how
that.
long did it take us to get our survey done?
1 week.
It took a week?
Well, it took a week for our
when the board
communications
asked
to
for
put together the questions, to get the board approved the questions, and then we put it out right before
So
Christmas.
maybe we just do just one equity focused one. And
I'm-
aside from the
Like,
spring.
I understand the purpose of the teacher working condition survey, but I'm concerned with how our teachers and staff feel regarding equity. Because I'll tell you right now, one of the decisions that led me out this door was equity. So if you already have people who are walking, you need to, I feel the district owes it to itself to see why people are walking. And they need to have that information sooner rather than later.
So it'd say September, next
And
meeting will be
I
October.
think your point about the connection between the administration and the people on the ground floor that can actually implement this is important too. Because, we can make all the recommendations we'd like, and I think we have in the past, but whether or not they can be implemented depends on these people. So you need that collaboration, that buy-in. But like my thought, and I'd love some supplemental thoughts, but in order to even get to the point where we're making these recommendations, just specific recommendations, I feel like we would need that data to better, to Ms. Sidbury's point, we would need that data to better zero in on maximize, where can we make an impact and see the ROI sooner, the return on investment sooner, so.
So is there any way, getting back to our discussion on the data, is there any way we can put it into Google's or whatever? Obviously, as long as it's redacted and, we have to make sure we're,
Can we add to that list that you're seeking, the number of functioning school equity committees remaining?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
And number two, as nicely as I can say
And
it, you must remember that we have several board members who ran, and it's in writing, against equity and diversity and inclusion. So I just have to say it, it's a fact, it's not a mirage. And so when we deal, we're having to deal with that at the same time. Just so you get the idea of the umbrella under which we're operating.
And I've talked a lot, and I'm sorry. But this is one of the few meetings in several months where I feel like I can talk. I did feel my voice was stifled before I hit that resignation submit button. So I'm trying to get in like 6 months worth of conversation into one meeting, and I apologize for that. But I feel, and Malcolm, this is not personally against you, but I feel your position and your office lacks teeth to do what needs to be done. And I want to know how we as a committee can support that. And I want to know how the members of the board who sit at this table can support what he does so that he can get it done. I want to know what his budget is going to look like. I want to know who's going to fight for him to have a budget with this cycle coming up, because I know February will be here before we know it. And I feel like if he's not going to get one going into next year, why are we still having these conversations?
Yeah, no, I know. I think we've been here before. I think
Like,
I've
he
tried-
can't do anything. He
Well, let
can't
me
make
just say
any.
this as a board member that has been trying to get him some kind of budget the last couple of years. It is hard to do when you're up against a budget. A budget that we have is humongous, first of all. Second of all, Mr. McManus has asked for a budget for this office, and it's been denied. So at some point, we as individual people can do that, but if it's if we can have a majority of people say, this is where we want us to go, this is the budget we want, then we'll get it. But
So
if we
then how
don't, we
can
won't.
you two, as,
Yeah.
or you three as members of the board, work with other board members to say, hey, this is a priority. Hey, this is in our strategic plan. He can't do nothing without X, Y, Z.
Well, and we also rank them every year too. And
And
I know
it-
I rank it pretty high.
And it's
so-
never ranked dead last.
No, it's like third.
So-
Most of the time, it's like third. And
So why can't he have teeth? Why can't he?
Third or fourth, but the
It's
first year
fourth
was
right
third.
now, and I think it was fourth last year, which again, isn't dead last. I think family engagement and community partnership
Community engagement,
are at
yeah.
the bottom.
Yes.
And none of them are really at the bottom, but I understand like
Yeah.
the hierarchy.
Still
But I'm
deserves
just
a
saying,
budget.
like,
To your point.
I mean, we're asking for a survey, and he again, I'm not personally towards you, he doesn't know if he can put out a survey from his office asking the district staff how they feel equitably.
Well, maybe that's something we need to.
I have a feeling like if I wanted to do that regarding communication, and I wanted to ask our staff how they felt about communication, I could just go to Sal and say, hey, Sal, can we get a pulse on what the district's feeling, like what our staff is feeling about communication, and I can have that sent out within a day.
See, I don't think that needs a board majority to do. I think, because we've asked for that. I don't even know if we had voted on that last survey, to just ask for it. I mean, I'm.
If it's
It's a
based on
different-
policy,
it's a different-
the surveys we have to vote on are the
Student
Those are
ones.
student
Yeah,
surveys.
that's
but
what I'm
not,
saying.
not
But
the
not-
I
staff
don't
ones,
think
so
we
I
need
don't
to-
know is that.
So as like as a district office, as a division, can divisions not just send out surveys inquiring about staff feelings and staff perceptions?
That's why I just said
I don't think there is a policy.
Well, let's
I was just
suggest,
wondering.
may I, that Malcolm
That's why I just say
ask
that.
permission,
That's all. That's all I'm saying.
whatever arena, to do whatever we decide as a survey, and let's see what
Well,
happens.
the EDI committee would like to do a survey.
Yeah, why does it have to be, I
Do you
mean,
feel comfortable doing
It's
that?
something.
So is this something that would the EDI community like to do?
I think
Push out a
that's what
survey?
we're talking about doing is
So are we
having.
asking, who are we asking?
Okay.
We asking the board members, or are we
So-
asking the chairperson?
What I would say is if that is the avenue that you want to take, then maybe we're gonna be running out of time pretty soon. For the next meeting, we can talk about what specific questions,
We could submit questions.
Right.
or we could send them in a group email, however you wanna do
So
that,
I-
and we can compile those.
When I set and that's a final thing, just the next meeting date, what that will look like, because it's gonna be, it
Yeah.
will be weird in October, but in the invitation that I create, could be the thread.
That could be the thread, yeah.
yeah, and it could just be there right
I'm just saying, I know we don't only meet once a month, but if we want to email what we think would be a good survey question, I mean, maybe it doesn't even have to be a long survey. It can just be some really good questions.
Whatever.
Related to the standards.
I mean, people.
It
does
could be
everybody-
two questions. Do you feel that you were?
Everybody know the standards.
Yeah.
So
Do
if
you
that's
feel
the-
like you belong? Yes or no? Do you want to provide additional information? Press here and just
So
Again,
get,
just
get,
the
get them
polls.
items in. I would draft it, and I can have something to present, like
No,
just a
it's
draft
not.
form of the survey,
This
just to
is
present
It's like,
Yeah.
to the committee if that works for you all.
That'll work.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that sounds good.
Correct.
that's why like every key point to
Correct.
it, and I'm just trying to figure out what.
Yes.
That's cool. Does that work?
I didn't hear exactly that. I'm sorry, I'm passing some documents, yes.
I was just saying
apologize.
to the committee that I was going to take all the survey questions, just draft a rough draft of a possible survey, just to be able to present to you guys for October.
I think that sounds really good. And then 2 clarification questions from me, if it's okay. I don't think we ever heard who says we can send out a survey. And we also didn't hear an important answer to a question that you raised, Ms. Walker, which is important, which is you have requested for multiple years a budget for the EDI office, but it was denied. Was it denied by a board vote, or was it denied through some other mechanism?
So the way you guys know how departments work with
Yes.
budgets, you have to, I was looking at Chris, and because I think I provided you the forms that I had in my notes to try and submit. So there is a form for that, and I don't know what the deadline is, whether it's January, I don't even know the deadline, but you fill it out, what you think you're gonna need for the year, and I mean, since I've been on the board, we've been ranking the strategic plan goals, and then it's kind of been proportioned that way, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think EDI's
If I
ever
recall,
gotten a budget.
you said,
at all.
because I asked you at the
I
last
submitted,
meeting, if you
I went
got
through the
a
budgeting process.
form to fill out for financial support.
Yeah, and I went through the full cycle of budgeting process. The budget that I put in was requested roughly about $45,000. It was centered around supporting the equity teams at each of the middle and high schools.
Engagement teams?
At that time it was the equity
Yes.
teams, but it was just a form of just providing the equity leaders just a stipend. So it was 45,
Yeah.
super small, just to get us off the ground. And it was to provide student voices with some funds just to kind of really push their implementation.
And
That
you
was-
got-
So that was the only, that
But I haven't
very
heard my
small.
answer, I think that I'm trying to get to. You gave that to whom? To who?
I went through the budgeting process through
Okay.
Every
And what
department
happened
has to
with-
turn in their
What were you
budget
told?
request.
Anything?
I didn't know, once I submitted everything and went through the interviews.
See, then what
and
we
then-
need is
yeah.
we do priorities.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying, we rank it, but even so, I don't think for 2 years since the officer position's been,
No, the last
we've
time you-
never had a budget.
Yeah,
No.
it's
We didn't get a
easy
budget
to
the
blame
time
the
you and I
board for
met.
things, but it doesn't sound like the board is the problem here.
Well, I mean, I know we've worked, I've tried to support Malcolm and get, to make sure he had the forms and, help, just, figure out how we do it. And, I mean, unfortunately, when it all shakes out, the district's gonna tell you what their priorities are, and if there's no money, there's no money there. I know, I'll just tell you, and I'm not trying to get any kind of whatever for it, but like, I could not vote for the budget last year because I was very upset that support staff was not being supported. And so, I mean, I lost that vote, obviously, but at the same time, I figured it would pass. But at the same time, it was like, look, this is important. Every year we should have budget priorities, but we get presented a budget and we're told this is how much money we have, this is what we can spend it on, and, sorry, you didn't get what you asked for.
That's
And
what
but he's not even not getting what he asked for. He's not getting nothing. So how is that? Like, so if you prioritize your strategic plans, then I guess like you'd maybe do a percent wise. Academic performance gets 70% of your budget.
Yeah.
Then you go on down, and everything else gets another percent. And then you get number 4, and maybe number 4 doesn't get the 40,000 he wants, but maybe it still gets 5,000. But he's not getting anything. So I just don't.
Yeah, they had a pie chart with it, but the fact.
So I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, with that pie chart, there should be something that the work that we are sitting here saying that we want, that we're charging to get data for, that we want to continue, that we need to.
So next
to
time I
move
can bring my
needles on.
past budget papers and I can show you the breakdowns. And I don't know what other category they put EDI under, except for your department.
So where is
But
EDI?
they might think, yeah,
Where
exactly.
is EDI located now? And then because it's a lot of questions when it goes to certain departments also within the district. And I guess sections within the district and how budgeting works. So what
It's under
umbrella does
categorized.
EDI come under now?
And that's a very good question. I mean, look,
Human resources.
So it's under human resources. So it's nothing within the human resource budget to where it is being streamlined to
His
you.
salary is the only thing that's under there.
And that's the thing. So the funding for the
So the
student equity teams, like all of that stuff cannot come through human resource? Because to
So
me,
that
that's
shift-
outside of,
So
you
I
know.
will tell you that shift of being under coming through human resources took place well after the budget. That was more so in the last month or so.
Okay.
So it sounds like Malcolm has done everything that he's supposed to be doing
Right.
to get a budget.
Right.
Sounds like the board supports
Yeah.
EDI getting a budget. So we just have to find the mysterious
Yeah, like the
location
mechanism.
that shuts down the funding.
So I'll tell you, look, we worked really hard on the strategic plan, and it was, and I'll tell you what, they were very thorough. They interviewed staff and board members and community members and nonprofit. They realized that this was one of the pillars of our strategic plan, was EDI work, and that they felt that was very, very important. So obviously, I think it's important, and when board members rank it, like we did, and like say, maybe last year it was third, but it's still in the middle, and I would like to see more budget money towards that, but I'm telling you, I'll bring all my budget stuff next time, and we'll look at what, all the categories that do I have the answers for you? No, I wish I did. I really wish I did, because I definitely support.
Okay, I love that we're having this much discussion. We're coming real close to end time, so. Already? But what I wanted to address, because I know that next month, I know this was kind of an odd day to have the meeting, and next month it might end up looking quite similar.
Yeah, that's what I
And
heard.
so really just wanted to kind of discuss
I know.
as far as that goes, when we might be planning to do the next one. Malcolm, I know you have some conflicts, so I didn't know, I know typically it's been the Monday prior to our board meetings, but you will be out of town.
Yeah, so I will be at a conference, an education conference during the first 2 days of October.
We have school on the 9th, correct?
I will be at one.
Indigenous.
So, I think there is school, I think school still is on.
Okay, so would we be able to bump it to the 9th? Would that be a viable option for
Nope.
people?
Not for me.
Nope, the Ames conference is done.
Oh, so it's conference.
I know the Wednesdays are wonky.
Yeah, Wednesdays are not preferable.
5th.
Of October?
That would be a Thursday.
That'd be Thursday.
And that's, again,
Oh,
a different kind of day.
Thursday,
Hopefully, we can get back on track
I
at
don't
some
even know if
point
I'm on PDI.
where we're having them, but
Tuesday.
until we can get back on track, I want to make sure we can get as many people here as possible. So would you said what date?
October 5th, Thursday.
The 5th, would the 5th work for?
That's fine.
Okay, so can we plan on the 5th of October
To meet back here.
to meet for?
Doesn't work for me.
It doesn't work for Gail,
It doesn't work for you.
so
Sorry. Drive by
that's
truckers.
okay.
y'all.
You're fine. You're fine.
I got tickets.
What about the
What is it?
16th?
Drive by truckers.
I mean,
I
what
feel like
about,
that would. I feel like it really is important to happen within that first week, because I think it'll push us too close on top of the next one to stabilize out.
So you say you're gonna be out on the 2nd, what day are you coming back?
So it would be the best date will be the 5th for me.
Could we, just make a protocol of inclusion? Like, okay, there will always be a time when one of us can't be here, but can I be responsible for reaching out to you and saying, is there anything you want to have raised at the meeting?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Can we also set whether these meetings go till 6 or 6:30?
I know they used to go longer, right?
Because I thought they went till 6:30, so.
On
Well,
the
they did,
invites,
it's
there's
So cutting of 30 minutes is, I
That's
think,
20 minutes. It says 6:10,
yeah, it says 6:10?
that's 20 minutes.
I'm not sure where that came into play.
I'm not sure either.
meetings.
Yeah, I personally would prefer 6:30 because we can get through
Get
so
more
little
done, yeah.
content.
I feel like we used to meet an hour and a half.
Yes,
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Today is a different story. 'cause
Right, today is, yeah.
I have
it's
another
I mean, it is what it is, right? But,
But, yeah.
but it
So do
used
we
to be
wanna call
scheduled
the
for an hour and a half, and that gave us more time to work.
So we want to meet on the 5th for an hour and a half.
But moving forward, it will be. I'll make sure that.
And
Because I just literally just
the next
copy and duplicate the invitation, so that's fine.
And I know we've only got 2 minutes left, but can we just?
And even if you do have to stop, I mean, I can stay as long as you guys need. If you have to, but that's fine. So we don't feel necessary to rush out.
Take good notes.
October 5th.
Can I just clap a little bit? Because I felt like we had a lot of good energy. We were able to bring concerns. We were able to, kind of ramp up a push for something. This was effective. if people feel differently, that's okay too. That's okay too. But this was effective, and I'm glad that people brought their full selves.
If we have that data next month, I will fill that energy too.
That's right, that is absolutely the truth. That is absolutely true. So it's what happens next month that gives us a real impression of what happened this month. Love that. Thank you so much.
Great job,
Thank
Sandy.
you all for
Say
coming.
something about surveys, sitting here talking at the ACES, which is the committee that Ms. Mason and I and Ms. Lim share together, serve on together, had no problem putting out the survey. We didn't have to
That was really
ask
quick, yeah.
anybody for anything. We collaborated with Joanna Souza and, oh my gosh, Kayla Thomas, and the survey was done.
Yep.
So
And we got a lot of good response,
We got a lot of great
I'm sorry?
We got a lot of great response
Yeah.
too.
We got an enormous
Yeah.
amount,
Yeah.
tremendous response. I'm sitting here wondering why this committee is having a problem when other board committees don't.
We'll
That's
have
my question.
a draft in next month, for next meeting.
Yep. That is one of the homework items for Malcolm and
And can you
or.
guys share the data via email since I won't be here next month?
I'm going to send out that spreadsheet just to remind people what we were going for. Yeah, and I realize, I think I said I would do that last month and I didn't, so that's on me.
Life happens.
Show up in
Life
your-
happens. Thank you all for coming today. If you guys want to continue the discussion, feel free. I have to.
Well, we can't do it without leadership.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. And one extra thing before you leave is, you know, we raised the issue of, there are some board members, maybe even here, who ran against the term equity, but it's really possible that in relationship and hearing what the work is, that maybe it's not this that they're running against, it's something
Right,
else
right.
that they're taking issue with. And so is it possible to have a conversation with board members
I mean,
just
I'd
to
love
say,
to invite them
That's a great.
in. I'd love to invite them in. So, you know,
Yeah.
just something
I think
we
they
can
were
consider.
invited in about 2 months ago.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
the board members on the dais invited the other ones and said,
Okay.
because it was asked if equity was still needed. So I believe
Okay.
no one is against
Walker
providing
and
high-quality
McMahon said, come
education
see
for
us.
people with disabilities,
Right,
right? No one's
exactly.
against that.
Nobody's
That's
against that.
equity, to
Yeah.
provide
That's
high-quality
what I was
education
looking
for
at when I
people
looked
with
at
disabilities.
yeah, when I looked at the board meetings, that's what it says, what was we needed for?
I mean, my kid's not even allowed in.